The rusty metal ladder creaked under Jake Thompson's weight as he descended into the dilapidated above-ground pool that had been the centerpiece of his backyard for the past 15 years. Sunlight filtered through the torn vinyl liner, casting strange fractured shadows across the stagnant water that looked more like a swamp than anything remotely swimmable. He gripped a sledgehammer, his weapon of choice for what was about to become the most cathartic moment of his summer. Sweat beaded on his forehead, not just from the oppressive July heat, but from the months of accumulated frustration that had led to this precise moment. The pool wasn't just a decrepit structure. It was a symbol of everything that had gone wrong in his life over the past 2 years. When Jake and his ex-wife Miranda had first installed the pool, it had been a dream come true. Weekend barbecues, his kids splashing around, neighbors dropping by, it was the epitome of suburban happiness. But that was before the divorce, before Miranda took the kids to Arizona, before the neighborhood had changed. And then there was Karen. Karen Martin, the self-appointed neighborhood watchdog, lived directly behind Jake's property. Her pristine, 2-story colonial looked like it had been lifted straight from a home and garden magazine, complete with immaculate landscaping and a perfectly maintained in-ground pool that she seemed to polish more often than she spoke to her own husband. Jake remembered the first complaint. It was about the pool's condition, the liner starting to sag, some algae buildup, the deck boards that needed replacing. A polite email at first, copied to the homeowners association. Then came the letters. Then the passive-aggressive comments whenever they happened to be outside simultaneously. You know, a properly maintained pool increases property value, she'd say, her voice dripping with mock concern. The final straw came 3 weeks ago. Jake had been working on removing some of the more damaged deck boards when Karen called the city inspector. The report cited potential safety hazards and code violations that would require thousands of dollars in repairs. Repairs Jake couldn't afford. So here he was, sledgehammer in hand, about to take matters into his own hands. The first swing connected with a satisfying crack. Water erupted from the initial puncture, spraying across Jake's work boots and cargo shorts. He wasn't dressed for demolition, khakis from his day job at the insurance office and a faded polo shirt that had seen better days. But precision wasn't the goal today. Destruction was. Another swing. Another breach in the pool's aging structure. With each impact, Jake felt something release inside him. The pool represented more than just a maintenance nightmare. It was a reminder of promises broken, dreams dissolved, a life that had slowly leaked away like the water now flooding his backyard. He didn't hear Karen approach, but he felt her presence, that electric charge of disapproval that seemed to radiate from her perfectly manicured lawn. "What do you think you're doing?" Her voice cut through the rhythmic sounds of destruction. Jake didn't stop, didn't turn, just kept swinging. "Mr. Thompson, I'm calling the authorities," Karen announced, already pulling out her phone. Her voice was that particular pitch of suburban indignation, part outrage, part performance. He knew he should care, should stop, should be concerned about potential legal ramifications. But something inside Jake had snapped. This wasn't just about a pool anymore. This was about reclaiming something he'd lost. Control, dignity, the right to manage his own property without constant judgment. The sledgehammer became an extension of his arm. Each swing was therapeutic, each crack in the pool's structure a small victory against the suffocating expectations of suburban conformity. Water was now streaming across the yard, creating a muddy river that cut through Karen's meticulously maintained flower beds. In any other moment, Jake might have felt a twinge of guilt. Today, he felt nothing but a strange, building sense of liberation. Little did Jake know, Karen's phone call would set in motion a series of events that would transform what seemed like a simple act of destruction into something far more complicated. A suburban saga that would become the talk of the neighborhood and potentially land him in more trouble than he could have ever anticipated. The pool continued to break apart piece by piece, a metallic skeleton emerging from its watery grave. And Jake kept swinging, unaware that his day of personal rebellion was about to take an unexpected turn. The first police cruiser arrived within 15 minutes, its blue and red lights painting Jake's destroyed pool and muddy yard in an apocalyptic glow. Officer Rodriguez stepped out first, a seasoned community patrol officer who had seen his fair share of suburban disputes. Jake stood amid the carnage, sledgehammer still in hand, water pooling around his boots and creating small rivulets that wound through the destroyed decking. Karen remained on her perfectly manicured side of the property line, phone still clutched dramatically to her ear, looking like she was narrating a true crime documentary in real time. "Sir, I'm going to need you to set down the hammer," Officer Rodriguez called out, his hand instinctively hovering near his holster. Jake complied, though more out of exhaustion than submission. The adrenaline that had fueled his demolition was rapidly giving way to a bone-deep weariness. Karen's narrative was already in full swing. "He's destroying property value. Look at what he's doing to the neighborhood." Her voice carried the perfect pitch of manufactured outrage, the kind that had made her a legend in local homeowners association meetings. Officer Rodriguez approached Jake, taking in the scene with a professional's measured gaze. "Want to tell me what's going on here?" Jake's explanation tumbled out. The costly repair notices, the financial strain, the constant harassment from Karen, the lingering emotional aftermath of his divorce. It was a story of desperation more than defiance, of a man pushed to his breaking point by a death by 1,000 cuts. The second police cruiser arrived, this time with a supervisor. By now, neighbors had begun to emerge from their homes, a suburban audience gathering for what promised to be a spectacular show of community drama. What followed was a bureaucratic dance that would have been comical if it weren't so serious. City inspectors were called. Property line measurements were taken. Karen provided a binder, an actual meticulously organized binder, of previous complaints about Jake's property. "He's been a menace since his divorce," Karen proclaimed to anyone who would listen. "Property values are plummeting." Jake's lawyer, Tom Richards, a family friend who had helped him through the divorce, arrived within the hour. A bear of a man with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow and a rumpled suit that screamed small-town legal practice, Tom listened to the entire situation, with a mix of exasperation and professional curiosity. "You do realize," Tom said quietly to Jake, "that Karen could potentially press charges for property damage and create a significant legal nightmare for you." The irony wasn't lost on Jake. What had started as a moment of personal catharsis was rapidly becoming a legal quagmire that could cost him more than the pool was ever worth. City officials measured the pool's remains, discussed ordinances, debated cleanup requirements. Karen hovered nearby, occasionally interjecting with additional complaints about Jake's yard, his fence, the color of his house trim, anything to maintain her position as the neighborhood's self-appointed guardian. By late afternoon, a resolution emerged that satisfied absolutely no one. Jake would be required to completely remove the pool's remains, restore the yard to its original condition, and pay a series of modest fines for improper property modification. Karen would be asked to cease her continuous filing of complaints, a compromise that felt more like a bandage on a gaping wound. As the last official drove away, Jake looked at the destroyed pool, his moment of rebellion reduced to a muddy crater and a stack of paperwork. Tom clapped him on the shoulder, a gesture of solidarity mixed with professional resignation. "Welcome to suburban warfare," Tom muttered. The neighborhood slowly returned to its usual state of manicured quiet. Karen returned to her perfect lawn. Jake's yard stood as a testament to a moment of raw, unfiltered emotion. And yet, something had changed. For the first time in months, Jake felt a strange sense of relief. The pool was gone. Karen's power over him had been momentarily diminished. He had acted, consequences be damned. As the sun set on this most unusual of days, Jake realized that sometimes destruction is its own form of creation. The pool might be gone, but something inside him had been rebuilt, a resilience, a defiance that no homeowners association or nosy neighbor could ever truly demolish.